We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording today, which for me is the Ngunnawal people. For Mama Love and Jenna, that is the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and connection to the land.
Welcome to Somebody You Love, or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights. So I wrote down that I would do the introduction for our guest today, but then I discovered that it's really hard to write a bio for your mum. I did work out that you're 70, which is wild.
Yeah, you came to the party.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I remembered it after I did the maths. Wild. Good on you.
Yeah, hey, I know it every day. Right.
So what I thought I would do as an introduction is read out the series of messages that my mum and I exchanged when I asked her to come on the show. If she consents to it, I'll read it out. And if she says
I can't remember what I
you
said.
can't share that, then Mr. Love will edit it out. So I said to Mum, hi, I don't suppose you'd be interested in being a guest on the podcast, interviewing you about what it's like for you having a daughter who's a sex worker. We'd send you all the questions in advance and you wouldn't have to discuss anything that you didn't want to, and we always edit it. So if you say something you don't want to say, Mr. Love will cut it out. I didn't call him Mr. Love in the message.
No, that would be
really
very weird. Yeah.
That would be, yeah.
I would have known who you were talking about.
Yeah, true. She's on board. Yeah.
She is.
Yep.
She is. She's a patron.
Yeah.
I said, I think it would be invaluable to have your perspective, but I also totally understand if it's not something you're keen on. My mum said, I think it would be okay, but I fear I will say something that might upset you. I'm not sure what, but where you are concerned, I often say stuff that I don't think is wrong, but it's wrong to your ears, if you know what I mean.
That's
Which
a
I
fair,
found
fair concern.
Yeah, it's totally fair.
Yeah, that's.
Totally
I think we
fair.
do that recording this every week. We're like, oh my God, what if we say
Yes.
the wrong thing about this or that?
Yeah.
That's normal. Yeah.
Totally. And I know that often my mum says things and I jump down her throat.
Oh,
So
that's nice
fair.
of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, yeah, I totally know what you mean, but I think it's important for people to hear the voice of someone that doesn't always say the right things when it comes to this stuff. And she said, I agree with that as long as it doesn't cause a rift between us. My need to have you in my life is much more important than anything else.
Oh, how disgustingly healthy.
I know.
My goodness.
It's gross, isn't
Can't
it?
imagine what that's like.
Holly cannot relate.
That's very lovely.
I said, I feel the same way. I'm sorry if I haven't made that clear because I'm not very good at
I know.
discussing emotions.
Yeah. No, I know.
I said, but I'm not interested in not having you and Dad in my life.
Yeah.
And she said, I will say yes then with trepidation. I said, that's so awesome. I'll get back to you about it. Also, I've told my lash tech that we're tattooing your eyebrows. And she said, I'm still trying to get my head around the eyebrows. I said, no, I've decided we're doing it.
Oh, well, that's nice.
And that was the end of our conversation that day.
I totally.
So
that fear is so valid, and I think particularly when it's somebody you love, and that you care about so much, and you really just don't want to put your foot in it. Even if you are so in touch with the work and the community and what the values, that sometimes you just use the wrong word or you say the wrong sentiment because it's just such a massive learning journey. Like we're always learning and we're always developing an understanding of different communities. That's what we do as humans. And I think, it's normal to be frightened.
And I feel like when you've been learning for 70 years, you probably get a bit over it.
What, overlearning?
Right, true. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
and no.
You just
Yes
go,
and
yeah,
no.
like,
time.
isn't this enough? Haven't I?
Yeah.
I'm trying, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I think it's just harder to get all that information in, all your ducks in a row, as they say.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot of information in there.
Totally,
Yeah, so.
For sure. All right, I think we've said hello. So welcome to the show, Mum.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here.
That's okay. Happy being here, I think.
Really? Yeah.
I can
Maybe.
feel the trembling across the screen. Like,
Yeah. The laughter is covering it, I think.
that's cute. First of all, give us the goss. What was Jenna like growing up?
Good start, Holly.
Weird.
She's sitting right here in front of me. What am I going to say?
Yeah, I'll kick
good
you
things.
off. Strange.
She was perfect, of course.
Oh,
Actually, she was. Very, very easy little person to raise. Funny, helpful, sensitive, super, super smart. Didn't like getting into trouble. So therefore never did. She was pretty one of those children that everyone hopes they have, and she was. She just didn't like being naughty. So what can you sort of ask for? So as a teenager, though, messy, very, very messy.
Yeah.
Swore way too much for my liking. But nothing other than that. She was very capable, very creative, very reliable, honest. I don't know. She was pretty much a good child. Then she grew up.
Doesn't surprise us in the least.
No,
I even suggest,
I'm sure it doesn't.
yeah, vaguely suggest something dodgy, she sits up at night, like rocking back and forth. Like she's such a good girl.
Yeah, doesn't like to be naughty,
No.
doesn't like to be in trouble. Yeah, doesn't like
And
to do the
that
wrong
is
thing.
why I very rarely tour Queensland and South Australia.
Yeah. No grief whatsoever, really. No concern.
Sweet, go me. All right, one of our patrons sent in, well, our patrons sent in most of these questions actually, but be honest, do you skip over parts of the podcast?
Most definitely. Even though, I think it's really great to have open conversations regarding sexual activities of any sort, any related subjects, always have. But this is my little girl, and the images I have in my mind just don't allow space for the intimate, personal subjects that you discuss sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, I can honestly say that I definitely push the pause button or the fast forward button, I should say. Sometimes it's just, okay, no, I didn't need to know that. Right? So, yeah, I definitely.
Oh, and I always forget that people I know are listening to the podcast. Always. Yep. Like whenever you and I chat, A, I kind of feel like it's just you and I, Holly. And B, I kind of feel like it's an audience of strangers. And then even my clients, but my friends, my family, they'll mention something in the podcast. I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah, it can actually feel quite voyeuristic sometimes. You sort of think,
Yeah, I bet.
oh, Jesus.
True.
Yeah. Sometimes the introduction will help me to sort of know to be careful.
Yeah.
But other times, no. So
Sometimes we just spring something really shocking on you and you just go, well, no. No, thanks.
yeah, it's not really shocking. It's just you don't want to know that.
Very
It's
specific.
like me talking about
Sure.
Jenna doesn't want to
know.
talk to me about my life and my actual
I
activities.
do. I'm curious.
Parent a father.
I'm very nosy. I'm very forward. How weird is it to hear people calling your daughter Jenna?
Really weird.
Yeah.
It's not the name we gave her, obviously. It's not the one we chose. So I don't know. It's weird. Yes, I actually like the name. I think it suits her.
That's nice.
I really do. I don't find it difficult when you're referring to her as Jenna or whatever. So I think that sort of part's good. And I think in some ways it allows us, when I say us, so my husband and I, to separate the work from the fact that this is my daughter sitting in the lounge room. So I think if she's talking about work, I am actually thinking of her as Jenna. But when she's just sitting talking about, what we're having for dinner, then I can relate to my own daughter. So, yeah, it's a good thing, I think, in that case. Yeah.
All right, first of the hard questions. So I have spoken on the show about how it took you a while to be comfortable with the whole idea of me being a sex worker. So one of our patrons asked, when I first told you, were you glad that you knew or would you have preferred to not know?
My answer's a bit longer on this one.
Yeah, and I'm scared to hear it.
No. I don't know if I am, what you say, comfortable with it as yet. I accept it, and I accept that it makes you happy, and I think that's a good thing. Initially, I had so many emotions running through my brain, most of them based on fear for your safety, and also you told me several other factors in your life which I was completely unaware of at that same time. So as a parent who thought she knew you really, really well, who actually bragged that I had such a great relationship with you, initially I was shocked.
Massive revelation.
I sort of, I just sort of went, you're not the person I had convinced myself you were.
Except I was.
Yeah, but I wonder how much of this is just a normal thing that a lot of parents experience, just in a greater degree.
reckon.
You have your child and the picture of your child in your mind, and then you have who they are as an adult, and reconciling those two identities is, I think, a constant journey for parents.
I think you're right, Holly, but my point was more that I think I felt that I'd been excluded
Yeah, wow.
from her life.
Okay.
And having had I think we had a pretty close,
Yeah.
she and I had a good close bond as we were growing up. So I think finding out all this stuff, I was a bit overwhelmed and thought, well, where am I in this picture? Why do I not know any of this? And that affected me hugely, and made me question myself a lot. You know, why? Why did she not tell me? Why was she not comfortable telling me right at the beginning? Blah, blah, blah. And I think at the time, sex work, when the sex work was mentioned, it was the only tangible thing I had to grab hold of. So I attacked the sex worker line because of that, I think, because everything was about, hang on, why she's left me out of her life, you know, she's excluded me, and it's all because of the sex work. But it wasn't really. But yeah, that was my initial sort of thoughts about it. The good part about her telling me was I could hear the relief. Not so much hear, because a lot of it was on text or email.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't having a direct conversation about this shit. Come on, I'm a millennial.
That's another time for another discussion, okay. Right? But so no, I think I was glad because for her, because I know lying is not in her being. Honesty is always what we've tried to instill in her and what she's always been. So I think, and I think we may have even touched on that subject during these, you know, discussions we had, that it was definitely easier for her now that was out in the open. So I like that part about it. I would rather hate what I'm hearing than hear a bunch of lies that I want to hear. You know, I think most parents would want to know the truth. How they deal with it is a whole different scenario, but I think underneath, every parent wants to know everything about their child and what they're doing, even if they don't like the results. So in the end, yes, I'm very, very glad. It also removed the speculative thoughts I was having.
Right.
Because for a long period of time, Jenna was doing things that didn't seem right to me. Uh-huh. She was flying. That was something, as a young adult, she said she'd never do. And she was flying around the countryside. Oh, wow. She was doing and there was too many, what are you doing there? Oh, why? These questions were making me think other things.
Yes. Right.
You know, like bad things, and her telling me and disclosing this stuff after I had time to think about it all. It cleared the air. Yeah. Made me stop thinking sinister things. Right. So that's another good thing about it. Yeah.
Was there a specific turning point when you started to noticeably feel more settled in the idea? Or do you think it's just been a gradual growth?
Because I pushed the honesty bit here, I have to be honest, don't I?
Yeah.
Again, I reiterate that I spent Jenna's lifetime imagining her future, and it certainly was not as a sex worker or an advocate for the sex industry or anything in relation to that. I'm not saying there that there's anything wrong with that. I think it's, you know, definitely a vital and absolute necessary industry. But it just is not where my thoughts were for many, many years. So I'm getting used to the idea, learning more, as you say, and settling into the idea more and more. But interestingly, when I was a young adult, I think I would have embraced the idea. But now, you know, it's a process. Age changes you. Age makes you think a little bit differently. Or, you know, maybe society makes us think that way. I don't know. But it's a process. That's all I can say. I am getting used to it. I still have difficulties. I still have thoughts. I still have worries. But I'm a parent. Regardless of what she does, I would have those things. So it's slow.
And from my perspective, thank fuck I didn't end up doing those things that whatever you want to do.
I know. I feel the same.
I'm so glad that's not my life.
I can relate to that feeling. I'm like, God, I'm so much happier being who I want.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
I can understand
that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
All right, so our patron sent in a bunch of really lovely compliments to pass on, which was very nice. Some of them were congratulations on raising a beautiful, giving human being. So much in this world is negative, as much as nurses or doctors or psychologists or any kind of health professional, the work Jenna and her colleagues do is just as valuable and inspiring. So, I don't know, that was really interesting for me to read because I guess whenever I've spoken to you about my work, I've sort of felt that, you know, it's this elephant in the room, that it's this like negative. And then so to read all these people being like, oh my God, your daughter's amazing. Like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel when you see these sorts of words in the context of me being a hooker?
Well, personally, I'd like to thank the patrons for all those beautiful words and for bothering to put them in print. I think regardless of the industry that you're involved in or your child's involved in, every parent would feel fantastic hearing compliments about their child. We, you know, my husband and I, as parents, we're no different. We love our child is being respected by others. To hear those words in relation to work in the sex industry is even more important, as it adds credibility to the necessity and the validity of the industry. Like when someone's out there going, we really need her, then how can you not appreciate those comments? You know, they're sort of very worthwhile. The positive feedback does not surprise me, as I've been witness many, many times to the efforts that Jenna puts into any project she sets her mind on. And we all want our children to be valued by others as much as we value them. So to hear words of praise is always good. We always knew Jenna would do well. And if you add you, Holly, and your combined compassions, both of your capabilities and determination, then it's guaranteed a positive result. So I totally agree with the patrons that wrote those words.
Shucks,
So.
you're a sweetie. I'm going to keep you. I'm going to adopt you as my mother.
Yeah, no.
Well, she always wanted grandkids.
Oh, no. See that.
Of course I wanted grandchildren.
Well, that's the problem, is
I
that
want grandchildren.
Neither
but-
of us want children, so we've stuffed you there. Even if you adopt me as a daughter,
Yeah.
you know, I can't, I'm
Yeah.
too old to be.
no
Did she
better.
adopt you as a
I'm
granddaughter?
too old to
That's
be a
bit weird.
granddaughter.
She's too old.
Yeah,
That'll make me feel
70.
old.
Yeah, that'd work.
Yeah.
Could have. You have to be speedy, but you could have got it done in time.
No.
You'd have to get a wriggle on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've spent a couple of years getting used to the no grandchildren. I'm fine now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm cool.
I think
That's another podcast.
That's where my mother got to too. I think she was, you know, always sort of wanted it. And now that she's committed to the idea that there's none, it's like, oh, I can enjoy my retirement a little bit. Like now I've got,
Exactly.
you know.
Yep.
So she's
No babysitting.
She's adjusted to it. She's got all the animals to look after and to cuddle.
Exactly. True.
Another very kind patron said, first of all, congrats on raising an awesome human. Jen's advocacy work is something to be proud of and a credit to her. Has she always had such a drive to help others, or is it a midlife crisis and a surprise? Oof, midlife, Jenna.
Am I midlife? Yeah, I don't know about this.
Jeez.
I'm not sure I'm midlife.
No,
Approaching.
my sentiments exactly. I went midlife crisis. Absolutely not. For one, she's not old enough to have a midlife crisis. Secondly, I don't believe Jenna is someone who does things on a whim. And thirdly, she is a research nut and would have thought out all of the consequences very heavily on this whole situation. So, no, not a midlife crisis. As a child, she didn't like to see people alone. I don't know if she'll remember this, but I remember an incident when she was quite young. We came across a man, I can't remember the real details, possibly a homeless person sitting alone. She was so upset by it. I think her imagination was working overtime. So she expressed her fears for him. She felt really bad for him. And it took a lot of conversation to convince her that he was okay.
He probably needed a hooker to make him feel
Probably.
better.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah.
Can I just quickly say, I did this a lot as a child. I would see children sitting by themselves and I would think about it for weeks and I would cry. I would not be able to sleep thinking about how lonely that person must be. We went to Los Angeles when I was about 12 years old and I saw my first homeless person. Having grown up in Canberra, we don't see a lot of that here, you know, and it rattled me for months. I cried at night thinking about it. So it's just fascinating when I see these very strange similarities between Jenna and myself. And I'm like, we were very strange children, but I see that that common thread. Anyway, sorry.
I remember a lot of that from when we went to
Don't
America
think I'd call you
when I was
strange,
8.
dear. You do remember that?
Yeah, I remember. Oh, I remember having a lot of that experience in America, and in Mexico in particular.
Yeah.
You did too.
I found that whole holiday, like there was fun parts, obviously, and I'm incredibly grateful for you and Tad taking me overseas. But for years after that holiday, I felt scarred by having seen people in less fortunate positions, I guess, which is a really good thing. Like kids,
it is a
see
good
that.
thing. Yeah, it's definitely a good thing. Yeah, and made us more aware of her, you know, of those feelings that she had. But I think as a parent, you just sort of think, oh, she'll get over that. You know, it's fine. But so it really doesn't surprise me now that she's working in this industry and helping other people. She has always advocated for others. Jenna comes across as a very confident, tough woman. But underneath, she is super sensitive, right? So I'm not surprised she's advocating for others. Jenna comes across as a really confident, tough woman, but underneath she's super sensitive. Choosing to fight for the vulnerable comes from noticing the world she is surrounded by, noticing that not enough people do enough. And she's never wavered in those sentiments, in my mind anyway. So not surprised at all. I've forgotten what the question was originally.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that lovely person saying, was it a midlife crisis or a surprise? I'd like to add to that I wish I knew everything about her, but I am a mere parent, which means probably I know a lot less than you do, Holly, or her patrons do, her other patrons or her clients.
Well, you're a patron, so you know all that stuff.
But, you know...
although you do skip bits, as we covered.
I'd actually like this question asked to Jenna at some point, because I think she could answer that better as to whether it's a midlife crisis or a surprise.
I don't think it is at all. I think I'm absolutely the person I was always going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it doesn't surprise me at all. Literally, multiple times as a child, I saw men on their own and cried, and now I'm literally a hooker. Like I think it's the most. Yeah.
I'm just wondering at what age you started to think, okay, I'll do that as opposed to...
Well, I didn't.
I
didn't
wasn't
think
eight.
that was a direct route, but it makes a lot of sense now. I look back and I go, that is obviously the person who I was. I thought loneliness was something that I wanted to help with. So I think that's, and in terms of advocacy, I agree. I've always been prepared for a fight more so on behalf of other people than myself.
Yeah. Very true.
Always.
Well said.
I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Don't surprise me, but of course you don't surprise yourself, do you?
Oh, I don't know. Do you?
I don't know.
I think so.
Sometimes I surprise myself.
I think you do.
Oh, I don't.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm very as I expect. All right. So, Mum, what, if any, discrimination or negative experiences have you encountered as a result of my work? And if you have, how do you manage them?
So, I think you'll both be pretty happy to know that I've not experienced any negativity from those I've told. Admittedly, there are some that I've not told, and that's for varying reasons. Some have never asked, or some I'm really not quite sure about whether they've been negative, and I don't know them or like them well enough to have to put up with any shit they give me, right, basically.
Fair.
So I've avoided that, It's not to say it won't come, of course, but at the moment, all good. Our closest friends and family, particularly the younger friends, have been more open and have asked more questions. And I like that because it shows more acceptance and it helps normalise it in my mind as a career, as a way of life. There are some friends who basically first reaction is surprised. But usually they ask us, how do you feel about that? How are you dealing with that? But, once they know, they're fine and the conversation just moves on to something else. I do wonder sometimes, are they going home thinking or, talking to their partner sort of going, all these questions that they don't bother to ask or they don't feel comfortable asking or don't know where to start probably because I was like that at the beginning too. And I wish they would ask me and maybe they will one day, but... we'll see. Most of them, I think, avoid the subject a little bit, but also most of my friends, because we had later in life, so most of our friends sort of haven't even really grown up with. So they don't really know us. So it's not like a common thing to say, oh, what's doing? The people who really do know her are the ones that have accepted, moved on, asked questions. They've been really great. So it's really not close people.
And some of you've had really positive experiences, right? Like with your neighbours, like they were...
Oh, well, they're the younger ones. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. They love it. They follow the podcast. They, they listen to the podcast. They ask questions. They can't wait to hear this one. They're sort of really looking forward to it.
That's so cute.
So yeah, no, and they have young children, and I'm really, really happy that they accepted it very, very easily. And a lot of people did that. I think I'd say this later, so I won't go on there. But yeah, no, positive experiences all around, really. I can't. I'm the problem, not our friends,
I love
it's sort
that.
of
That's really good.
the fear of being judged and or
love that you're
ignored.
the
And
No,
yeah,
I love that you haven't had
But it is.
these experiences. That's really good.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
of course,
that's
I did too, because obviously my fear was that I wasn't going to have good experiences. But
Well, and Holly and I have been through the same thing. We've
Yeah.
been
Totally.
through that journey
Yep.
of going...
Should I
of
tell
the
this
fear
person?
of what people are going to say is, well, yeah, and we continue to go through it every day of our lives. So we we totally understand. And your own fear is often worse, but that's not to say it isn't a valid fear, because there are people out there, obviously, who are mad cunts.
Oof.
So,
yeah,
Oh, Jenna, love.
my mum loves it when I say that word.
yeah, she knows I hate
Yeah,
it.
I
think
so.
she says
I
it
thought-
just for me. Yeah.
That might be okay.
Absolutely knows. Yeah.
Gorge.
Give me the other words, I'm fine. I use them all the time, but not that one. I don't like it.
Cute. We generally observe that stigma and shame surrounding sex was ingrained in prior generations, and that this has seemed to decrease each decade. This is not a scientific comment. It's just, colloquially what people tend to say and what people tend to observe. Prior to Jenna's career in this industry, how did you feel about these sexual revolutions? Have they taken some personal growth and reflection to embrace, or were you just like, hell yes, let's get naked?
I have a long answer to this because I'm 70.
Yeah, I love this.
There's a lot of years,
Share
right?
with us.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Okay, I agree. Stigma and shame are the history of sex education, and I agree that each decade there has been a small improvement. I'm also aware it is a very slow process. Our generation spent many decades trying to disperse a lot of negativity around sexual activity. It was such a huge myth to dispel that it could only be chipped away in small ways. My husband and I, we thought we were pretty open with sexual activity in our discussions with our friends. It was always discussed, always open. Not to the extent of like a sex worker would do,
Sure.
but as friends would do. It was hard back in those days. The revolutions you talk of were not the huge episodes that you may think. They did not have the impact that a protest could have today. For one thing, news was not fast and information very inaccurate. For the first 30 years of my life, my information came from an ill-informed adults and a few books written in the past, always. Books take a long time to produce. So by the time you get that information, it's way out of date. So you're living in the past all the time. Protests and open discussions there was a lot. And they were necessary, and they brought some awareness. But without the internet in the early 80s and the improved education on the subject, discussion sometimes added more fuel to the fire and therefore more negativity around the subject. So it was often not great for the subject. Those of us who believed that sexual activity was something to be talked about and explored were considered rebels and bad influences. And of course, this is no different to any changes in society, even in today's climate. However, there were very few resources and little support available, so it was very hard to make any sort of difference in the world. If you think about conversations you and Jenna have on your podcast, they're informative, they help destroy some of the old myths. Now imagine trying to get all those conversations out to the masses without the internet. You could put an article in a paper, hope someone reads it a couple of weeks later maybe. Yeah. You could write a paper or a book and try to get someone to publish it and then hope it gets read weeks, years later. In Australia, you could get on your soapbox down the domain, which is where we got a lot of information, where people would get up and sprout their wares and we had to wander around, and you might have 10 people listening, you might have 100, but that'd be it. That's the only people that you're reaching back in those days. So pretty hard to get through to anybody. You could protest and you would be in a minority and probably get perceived as someone without credibility, so therefore ignored by the masses. Our options were very limited, and so we talked about it among ourselves with the hope people would become more aware. We tried to be as open as we could with our children with the hope that things would change. And then the internet changed the world, and it's helping to change perspective on sex being shameful to it being necessary, vital, and a fun part of our existence. I see a huge improvement in my lifetime and even bigger in the next generation. For me, personally, I always saw a need for sex workers. My husband and I discussed it often. What I did not see was the negativity of the laws and the difficulties surrounding the industry. So for me, hell yes, let's get naked would be my preferred reaction. Not me personally, though. Right?
Gorgeous.
Well, not at this age. Maybe back then, yeah.
Oh, come on, don't be shy.
So as far as my personal growth and reflections, I've been doing that all my life in many different aspects of my life. Sexual awareness is not something new and definitely will always be controversially discussed. In my mind, it is the most personal interaction between people, and we are all individuals. There will always be opinions about what is considered as public or private. So you will always get arguments against what you're doing.
So do you have any advice or insight? God, I hate when people ask me this, so I hope you don't mind, that you think might be valuable to other parents of sex workers?
I hate it too. I don't think I'm in a position to give advice to anyone else. As I said, it's a process each person will have to go through. If I thought it would help, I think I would suggest to parents, if you choose not to learn about what your child is doing with their life, then you will be the one missing out. Also, I would like to say that for them to remember the times as their children were growing up, that they said, and I'm sure every parent says it, all we want for our children is for them to be happy. So if that's what you really, really felt was the correct thing for your child, then take the time now to ask them if they're happy. And that should give you the reasons to accept what they're doing and who they are. And that's all.
Well, that quote's going on our social media.
She's always the content queen, always looking for the soundbite.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, what a heartfelt moment. And you're like, social media.
Yeah.
For you, what are the easiest ways to be an ally, and what have you found the hardest?
This is the short answer. Okay. The easiest way to assist them is the same as any career. It doesn't matter what they're doing. Listen, learn, love them. That's it. There's nothing else you can do as a parent. The hardest, getting over one's own expectations and inhibitions. And that's short and sweet.
You're killing these answers. Jeez. I know. This is so good.
Yeah. Okay, this one was not sent in by a patron. I'm sure no one can imagine who sent this question in. It is, would you rather have the ability to fly or time travel?
So, Holly.
Me?
Maybe. So, I laughed at this one. So 20 years ago, I would have said fly because I would be able to see the rest of the world. And I really want to do that. Have done a little bit of it, would like to do more. Now, though, as I age, I wish for time travel. Firstly, I'd like to go back 100 years to remind myself how far we've come in every aspect of the world. And then I'd like to go forward 100 years to see what is happening to the world and if we are readily travelling from planet to planet.
Kick-ass answer.
Big
Yes. I love that.
I think the amount of change that we've seen is incredible, and I can only imagine what the world is heading towards. Should be massive changes, I think.
Yeah.
So, good luck.
Yeah. What do you think is the most important legacy that a person can leave behind?
Another question I hate.
Yeah, worst question, Holly.
This is the most impossible question to answer. Everything is so cliche. You sort of be the best person you can. Work hard,
Yeah.
be happy, change the world.
And I guess that's why I've asked this one. I thought we want to know what you think. What does Mama Love think is a really important legacy, or what do you value in life?
I think other than being honest, in the majority of your life, we all tell little white lies. We all do things that we probably shouldn't do. But I think generally speaking, if you're just honest, it makes a better world. What I'd hope for is that this generation improves as previous ones have. I personally believe that conversation, interaction is what helps us learn. Listening is what makes us better people, because not many of us listen with any heart. I'd like us to remember that somewhere in the world there will be someone who'll disagree with you, and they will have a valid reason to do so. So if you don't embrace those reasons, you will never go forward. It's not a legacy, just a hopeful thought.
So we're done. How do you feel?
Me?
Yeah.
Relieved. Wasn't as hard as I thought,
Yeah.
actually. I am glad I prepared for it, though, because I do get my words all muddled up these days, and I like to make sense.
Yes.
I do think I've got something to offer the world, so I like to put it out there so that it does actually make sense to somebody else who's reading it. And I hope that there'll be other parents that listen to this. I really encourage them to. It's hard sometimes to go through this process, but really, really important that you listen to your kids.
What about, is Dad jealous that I asked you and not him to be on the show?
Not at all.
Oh.
No, he knows you well enough to know you wouldn't ask him.
Oh.
That you wouldn't ask him.
Because I think he'd be a terrible guest.
Poor Dad.
Yeah, but he probably hasn't even thought of he. I think his process would have been, yeah, well, that's obvious that you'd ask me. No, he wouldn't be. Your father's not jealous of anything,
No, I know that.
particularly that you do. God.
Yeah. I just thought he might be like, oh, well, I've got things to say.
I don't know. Won't you ask him?
Oh, I don't know.
Might surprise you. No, he probably wouldn't want to come on here. I have really no idea, but you'd have to
Interesting.
ask him.
We'll see what he says.
Yeah.
I
He
mean,
did
I'm
tell
just
me
working my way
straight
through
off.
my family. So.
Yeah, no, he did. Straight off, he just sort of went, oh, yeah, that's good. Okay, do
Yeah,
that.
awesome.
I went, maybe not.
Holly and Mr. Love were a bit, like when I suggested, I was like, this is the best idea I've ever had. And they were both like, are you sure?
Oh, were we? Oh, I think I was just like, I'm surprised that she's on board, because it's quite confronting to. It took us that long to get Mr. Love on board, and then like the next week you're like, all right, Mum's
Yeah.
here, and I'm like, oh God, wow, okay. Yeah. I don't know what you've done to convince everyone, but we can.
I don't know.
They all love me.
Yeah. Well, we can. Well, yeah. Rub salt in my wound.
Okay. I think we trust. We trust that her and Mr. Love would not do anything.
No, of
really
course.
bad.
We can definitely get my dad on the show, but we'll need to do a seance. So that could be a very interesting episode.
Well, that's from my era too.
Yeah. Well,
A really quiet episode.
a little Ouija
Definitely
board out,
did
and
that.
could be entertaining.
Little Ouija board.
Yeah.
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 Should do.
That can be a solo. You can just release that one on your own, Holly.
Cute. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mama Love. It has been such a pleasure. I think your answers have been so heartfelt and so enlightening, I think. Illuminating? So illuminating, I think is the word. Yeah, it's been just fantastic to have you on the show, and we're really grateful that you've taken not only the time, but also what is a pretty emotional and mentally challenging leap to come and talk about this sort of stuff with such an audience. So, yeah, thanks for your time. And yeah.
And I don't know if listeners are aware, but like these aren't really conversations that my mum and I have had before, a lot of them. So I learnt a lot today as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. And you're welcome, Holly, and thank you so much. And have to get my 5 minutes of fame somehow. So this is it, I think. No, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And Jenna is right that we don't have these conversations, and that was one reason in the back of my mind, I think, that I wanted to answer the questions and I wanted them honest. So hopefully she does know a bit more about me now.
Very cute. Thank you to the world's sexiest patrons, our new very generous somebodies, Lindy Orthia and G.O. Our even more generous somebodies, hello, it's me, Alex, Dave, the Ashley Stafford, the Rhiannon Rhodes, Nomad, Adele, Afraz, Andrew, Biggie, our secret admirer,
our footstool, Greenie, Lachlan, Leslie, Sub London, Miss Billy, Mr. E, NK, the Ophelia Parker, Scott C, Simon, Steve, Timmy, Wheezy, and Luke. And our extremely generous somebodies are Crochet Cat, Aaron, Adam Smith, Skippy, B&J, Andrew, Pete, the Sienna Saint, and Adam Moore. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been super weird and anxiety-inducing for me, but I've loved it.
Yeah, I think I just saw you chew off like half of your fingernails during that recording. So thanks, Thanks, pals. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.